projects as much as it's about your portfolio that you want to sort of apply for an internship, right? So that's the intent. If you'll focus on that, then it will help because we'll have a more fruitful discussion then.
Yeah, we are live on YouTube and we'll be broadcasting.
It's not about the projects as it's about your portfolio that you want to sort of apply for an internship, right? So that's the intent. If you'll focus on that, then it will help because we'll have a more fruitful discussion then.
Yeah, we are live on YouTube and we'll be broadcasting.
It's not about the projects as it's about your portfolio that you want to sort of apply for an internship, right?
Yeah,
so that's the intent. If you'll focus on that, then it will help because.
Okay, Shantanu, I'm going to broadcast it now. Then you can.
Shantanu not saying anything, but it's repeating.
Yeah, we are live on YouTube.
Yes, Shantanu, would you like to introduce Kayzad and I?
Yes, I'd introduce all three of y'all actually. I'd start with Iype. Iype Chacko was my senior in SEPT. I met him in SEPT 30 years ago, 3 decades ago. Iype we met, and one of the aspects that always stayed with me about you is your refined level of drawings and model making. Those skills are etched in my memory. And in your work, as I got to know you more, because we are in hostel, we would always see each other's work, or more, we would see our seniors' work and learn from them. I saw this clarity of form based on composition of elements. And there's always this intent of structure in the drawings. It was never overbearing, but if you probed into the drawing, spent more time in the work, you would realize that there's always this structural order and intent in the work and drawings. And as I got to know Iype a little more over time, I sense there's one quality he had at that time, which was he was quite self-critical about his own work. Now, this is something which is very rare in architects. We all depend on mentors, we depend on juries and guides. But Iype had this quality very, very early in his student days, which I find it was very impressionable at that time. So he spent after he finished from Ahmedabad, he spent considerable time in Dubai executing eminent projects there and gaining experience. And once he came back to India in Bangalore, he and Rajesh Ranganathan set up a practice, established Flying Elephant. The practice has got several awards and won many competitions. To name a few, the Wholesome Award for Sustainable Architecture, Chicago Athenaeum International Architects Award. But there's a long list. I won't go through the list. You'll have his CV on the poster. So welcome, Iype, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Shantanu. Thanks, Manisha, for having us. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Kayzad Shroff, I know Kayzad since 2 decades. I remember when I first met him, we were on a study tour to Goa. I just started teaching, very shaky. And I remember he was taking this big step to leave the school I was teaching in, to go off to a faraway land, go to the United States to study architecture. So giving up his comfort zone of Mumbai, his parents being in Mumbai and a Mumbai school, as a teenager, he was going off to America, which is, so it was quite bold, I thought. And it was all, in search of knowledge. So I thought he was very curious at that time, looking for new things. And then I met him again after he finished his undergrad and master's at Cornell. He worked in New York and came back, and interacting with him over the past few years, I've realized that in his work, he's very meticulous and he's very disciplined. And this is a lethal combination because clients love this. This in making of an architect, if you have these two qualities, and he has a great eye for detail. So I think Kayzad has all those qualities, and that's why we want architects like Kayzad on juries like this or reviews like this. So he set up his practice with Maria Leon, who's his partner. They won several awards. the NDTV Architect of the Year Award. They're always every year on the AD 100 list, ID Honor Award, and Kayzad is the recipient of the Jal Mistri Award for Youth Entrepreneurship. Again, there's a long list. I won't go through the whole list. Welcome, Kayzad. Thanks for joining us. And our last reviewer is Manisha Agarwal. I've introduced her before on this platform, but I'll do a short review. She's done her master's in Cornell. She studied at CEP, and that's where I met her. And we've practiced together, mobile offices, for the past 20 years. And she's worked in New York for Rafael Vignoli, and the practice has won several awards. And she's actually one of the founders of AR.critique. And I welcome you to Manisha. And we can start. I hand over the mic to you.
Thank you, Shantanu. Thanks once again, Iype and Kayzad. So the team, as Shantanu mentioned, is largely all here together with us. So it's Shantanu, me, Sudipta, Sanket, and Nilay. And today the presenters, the participants are in the order. I'm going to just kind of name them before I hand over the mic to them. There's Gyan from CEPT. There's Nikhil from MBA School of Planning in Delhi. There's Nikhita, who's from Kamla Raheja in Bombay, and Kashish, who's from SPA in Bhopal. So welcome all of y'all, and I hope this will be a beneficial session for y'all and for the audience who's here today joining us. Thank you so much. So I'm going to hand over the just give me a second, please. Gyan, I've given you the remote. Can you just check, please?
Not able to control as such. So.
Just go down over here and you'll get the number of the pages. You should be able to. Give it a second. Yeah. Good?
Yeah. Fine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Praharsh from CEPT University, Ahmedabad. So I joined college in 2017, and if things go according to plan, I'll be graduating in 2022. So in 2 days' time, I'll be starting my 4th year in architecture school. That will be my 7th semester. So yeah, I'm glad to be a part of this presentation. So firstly, I'm supposed to be talking about the typology of work or the kind of office I really wanted to work in. But I'd like to say that I really didn't think 3 years in architecture school was kind of enough to me to finalize that this is the kind of work I really want to do. But I can give you an insight as to what kind of offices I did apply to in the end. So for my 7th semester internship, I was looking at rather small scale firms which worked with the residential aspect of things, be it a bungalow or a second home, with a strong focus on material exploration. So that is something that really fascinated me. And along the same lines, I kind of accepted an internship at Design Workshop headed by Shabir Unwala in Lonavala. So ideally that internship was supposed to start right about now, but due to the situation, it's been postponed to 2021 Jan. But yeah, so after that, I'll just walk you through a brief intent of the portfolio. So the portfolio is essentially a compilation of my 3 years at CEPT University and other co-curricular activities. Personally, for me, the making of the portfolio started almost 1 semester before I was actually supposed to sit down and make it on InDesign. So at CEPT, what we're supposed to do is to choose the studios we want to take up. And personally, what I felt was having the working drawing aspect in my portfolio would be critical. So my 5th semester ended up being the working drawing aspect because I felt any firm would be interested in taking up a student who would have that kind of skill set to make a set of working drawings. So that was the first step towards making the portfolio. And the second was obviously right before sitting down. I went through quite a few portfolios of my immediate seniors because, well, that was the best resource I had in hand. So after that, I'll just talk about the intent. So the portfolio is essentially a means of me to communicate my selected works. I'm sorry, I'm not able to scroll down.
You can go here in this format and then scroll.
Yeah, one second. Yeah, so the idea was to have a very simple read and a very minimal graphical layout, because after all, that is, I felt the firms wouldn't be looking at a very cluttered form of representation. And me, myself, being a person who doesn't really sort out things from the get-go, like I really didn't have a plan of action as to this is my graphical layout, this is what I want to do, but rather felt I'd let the portfolio be in itself a very organic process where every semester could probably have a different layout, but a certain guiding principle that binds everything together. So this is the CV, a very brief introduction about myself. And as you can notice, another decision that I had taken up was using the landscape format, which I felt was a very interesting narrative in terms of uh, mainly minimizing the number of spreads I would have and essentially making the portfolio a very simple one in that sense. Because most of the firms I had applied to required portfolios of size 5 MB or less. So minimizing the number of spreads was one of the criteria that I was looking into, and the landscape really helped me do that. And the landscape also helped me develop this story kind of a narrative where every semester could then be treated like a smooth flow of things where every drawing could then be supported by diagrams and process sketches in that sense. So I'll just quickly go through the entire portfolio and just probably talk about semester 4 in brief. So this is, and yeah, before I do that, I'd also like to mention how the portfolio is an approach where I'm showing off my latest work first, and then it subsequently goes to my last works, because that was again a call I had taken in an attempt to catch the attention of the viewer, because definitely over time, the refinement in the projects grew, the scale of the project grew, and the design thinking also, in my sense, got refined. So this is semester 6, where we dealt with climate response in a place called Leh, and this was primarily a school. This is the initial vision of the project. So I felt words were critical in some spreads where my intent, when it couldn't be conveyed in terms of diagrams, words were very important. Another important aspect of the portfolio is my process sketches, be it at the very beginning of the semester or towards the end. So I felt the hand sketching medium is something I was very comfortable with and I wanted to highlight in the portfolio. So as you can, this spread then starts talking about the final drawings, which as you will notice is always supported by a set of diagrams on top, where this kind of talks about the overall layout, massing, citing, etc. A similar layout is followed in all the spreads for this semester. And because the next spread was about a wall section where I had to emphasize on the wall section, the drawing in itself becomes a bigger one where details are focused on, the scale of the drawing changes, and in that way the layout also changes. So as you can see, the layout is not a very rigid one. And this is the Sem 5 working drawing studio that I was talking about, which I chose intentionally in my 5th semester. Maybe it wasn't, I wasn't ready for the working drawing, but I still chose to do it for the portfolio. So the cover page is again an important aspect of the portfolio, I believe, where the entire spread is an attempt to not only tell you that you've moved on to a new project, but also kind of encapsulates the rough idea of what the project is, and doesn't really say that this is the only extent of the project, but gives you a brief idea. That was the main idea. And it's always supported by a small series of text to the left-hand side. So again, the working drawing demanded spreads which kind of focused on a single drawing in itself. So I really didn't clutter the spreads again. But again, except for this one, I think I kind of got carried away by trying to show a lot of work of the working drawing, because after all, I did kind of put efforts into it. So few spreads are maybe cluttered in its sense, but I've still tried to maintain the simplicity of it. And again, supporting them with simple diagrams in 2D fashion. Again, a spread of details of staircases and doors. And another aspect at CEPT University is the focus on model making. And I felt that is something I really might want to emphasize on, the act of doing things by hand and how every semester has something or the other in this aspect. Another important spread of the portfolio would be this, because I feel after semester 4, I realized that the work I've done till now doesn't really have any digital renders, mediums, softwares, etc. It was all by hand. And I was kind of getting really comfortable with the idea of doing it by hand. So I kind of pushed myself to take the competition up, not as a means of exploring design, but rather as a means of exploring a representation tool. So the render you can see is made on Photoshop, and it was just something I took up in the vacations. Now I'd like to get into this project a little in brief and talk about the organization of stuff, because it's not really a very conventional type of a design studio. So the studio is kind of based on Christopher Alexander and a book of his called Nature of Order, where the entire intent was to look at how the act of designing can be perceived as acts of enhancing the previous act of design or existing things. It's something I can't really put in words, but I'll try to capture it in the process. So the semester initially dealt with the site in itself and what can you capture on site? What are the feelings on site and what are the emotions on site? So if up until now, none of the spreads really have photo documentation like this, but because this semester demanded this kind of a process, I really didn't want to remove this spread from the portfolio. So the layout departs in that sense, where the site is then trying to take the front seat. Another thing that you'll find different about this entire semester is its lack of focus on ordinary 2D drawings as such, where the entire intention of the semester was to set up words as a means of setting up a design vision for the project. So 2D representation was later on thing that happened, but words were the guiding principle. So the project in itself is 4 rather small scale interventions, which are supported by means of sketches. So I chose to detail out one project in terms of 2D drawings and representation, but the other projects or the other 3 interventions were just views supported by what I imagined the place to be used as. So I'd like to say that this was a group project in itself, and it was a collaboration of 4 of us. So it was a really good experience at that. Another important thing, again, like I mentioned, model making is something very critical at college. And I really wanted to emphasize on this approach that we took up in the semester, where we took a small part of the project and we blew it up to 1:1. And then we kind of understood as in terms of making, how when we actually start to make something, in this case, it being a seat with a simple column, how can iterations and a way of exploring different iterations change and evolve the design. So the entire spread is catered towards that. This is another project, rather conventional in its means of drawings. So again, the focus, my primary focus was how do I make the cover page something that attracts the viewer? Because after all, I really felt the visual aspect of the portfolio was something I will definitely have to focus on. So again, the intention was here that the entire semester is not really me focusing on design. The process doesn't start from design, but other small scale exercises which then set a path for the design. So these were small exercises in terms of understanding a certain architect's attitudes towards design, me interpreting these designs, and then small maquettes coming up and small things like a cube, a maze, and a trophy that represent the architect's intentions. Then again, these ideas of design were carry forwarded to a project in Udaipur, and I've tried to implement the same. I personally feel I had I mean, I really like the drawings that I had produced in this particular semester. So the spreads also start becoming more simpler, where a single drawing then is more emphasized on. So white space then starts to declutter the drawing, where focus is again focused on one thing. A similar logic is applied here, where the wall sections are. And another thing you might have noticed is the lack of the traditional section in in this particular semester, because I personally wasn't satisfied with the outcome of the sections, but I still made sure that spreads like the cover page and the in detail wall section still covered the aspect of how the space is perceived volumetrically. So those were the academic parts of my 3 years at SEPT. This is a more recent experience where it is a 2-month internship at CritRoom Architects in Hyderabad. So I just wanted to put up the work I was involved in, where it was 2 of us involved in a residential project in Andhra Pradesh. So I felt it was important not only to talk about the drawings I've made, but also the site visits I had gone to in terms of understanding the process or the construction method I was dealing with for this project. So there were sites, construction sites already following the projects in Hyderabad itself. So we had gone, visited, documented, etc. So documentation was something I wanted to focus on.
You need to, I think you're running over time, so you need to focus on something so that we can close this on your side. Can you pick something that you can focus
yeah, so I think I've talked about in detail the semester 4. Everything else I feel follows the same thing. So if I was to detail out more, it would be the entire different process of how semester 4 is departing from the layout, but still has a characteristic of its own. And yeah, everything else would be the same. I'll just briefly run through the remaining spreads if you. So these are 2 documentation projects, one in Spiti Valley and one in Goa. Yeah. And again, like I talked about my interest in hands-on, this was a workshop I'd taken up in after my first year. So yeah, that's the portfolio in itself. I hope it was what you guys are expecting.
Thank you, Gyan. So, Iype, would you like to go first on this?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, definitely. I kind of like the portfolio. I like the fact that you actually thought of structuring the portfolio in a particular manner. I wish it could have been consistent all the way through. Sometimes you can actually optimize on the amount of information that you want to put in. So even if I look at, yeah, like if you will just stop here. So on an average, if we're getting a lot of portfolios to look through, I don't think you really needed all 3 sketches, you know. We're probably going to look at one sketch and assess what your capability is, you know. And even if you wanted to write something about it, you definitely make an assessment based on one sketch. You really didn't need to put all 3 and lose the overall structure, you know. I think it's good that the portfolio, and even in your conversation now, you kind of outlined the necessity to actually structure a portfolio, have points where things pause. I think those things are very important, you know, for the information that comes in, and it's not cluttered, you know. And there is an attempt, but I wish you had carried it through all the way through, you know, it carried it consistently. So in some you have the 4 sketches at the 4 squares at the side, you know. In some you have them on top, in some they become circles, in some they become squares. So I think it's very important to have that consistency all the way through, you know. and you don't have to change it because it affects the flow of how people read information, you know. So if you set this as a template, I think you should just carry it through. There's nothing wrong, and you can filter information as you move along and keep it to the optimum to carry that structure through. That's what I would say. Finally, I do not think officers would really be looking at all 5 of your sketches in that much detail unless it really interests them. It's really this thing, then they probably look at it, read it a little bit more. But I think to have that overall language through is very important. I like the other things. Yeah, I think if you move back, I think if you can just start from the beginning, I'll just run through my comments. Yeah. Yeah, this is fine. All this is fine. You can go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's very important to choose the views that you put into a portfolio. So like to me, the stone in the foreground is just taking up too much space. It's really not that important. So when you're putting something together, it's important to put together a view which actually conveys something about the project. I think the steps in the foreground kind of eat up everything. So you should always think, so even in whether it's your presentation for a jury or something, putting together a portfolio, I think it's important to choose a view and be very careful about what you present. So as an overall structure, this is fine. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, so again, yeah, even on something like this, I think you should have kept the structure consistent. And I'm not sure if you needed to show all these sketches. 1 or 2 would have been sufficient to get I think the one on the right has a lot of strength, and that would have been sufficient. And with 2 lines or 2 phrases, that would have been enough for us to get an idea. You can move ahead. Yeah, I think it's an overall level. So just putting section lines, that clarity, having a section relate to the plan. I think that kind of thing, if it interests somebody, they'll definitely look at it. You can move ahead. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, so I like this. If you move back, yeah, I like this thing of having a structure, an image and some text. It definitely structures it much better. You can move ahead. Yeah, I think all this is fine. A person can definitely gauge what your capabilities are. I like the fact that there's a plan, and then the next sheet has a couple of smaller sections or detail section, and then it breaks onto a larger section, larger details. I think that's structured well. You can move ahead. Yeah, so even over here, I would say don't lose it. Choose the best image and the best of the model that you want to show, to maintain that structure. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I had to say. Yeah, I think that's it from my side. You can just move to the end if there's anything else. Yeah, I like these drawings, like this sketch and this, and it's good that you mentioned also that you didn't have time to do sections and you kind of limited it, and it conveys a lot, what your capabilities are. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it from my side. Yeah.
Kayzad, would you like to go next?
Sure. See, for me, when you started talking about what kind of, you don't need to go through the portfolio, that's fine. What kind of an office are you trying to go to? Where you spoke about wanting to go to small offices, where you are particularly interested in material exploration, right? I would have frankly used that as a lens with which to present your entire portfolio. Yep. What that means is you talk about materiality, the way certain materials are used, the way certain materials are put together, and explain the project through that angle. I think that kind of does 2 things. It sort of shows, at least for me, a one-track mind in terms of what you're interested in, what are the aspects of architecture that excite you. Also, as an office, when you get a portfolio like that, you sort of understand that this applicant is very interested in one particular aspect of design. And it definitely will stand out. But I feel you need to have a lens with which to present your portfolio also. Yep. Maybe this is just me, but frankly, I don't really care about working drawings. Yep. I don't care about working drawings because I'm of the belief that most offices have their own way of doing working drawings. Most offices will not probably do working drawings in the dry manner in which it is probably taught in school, where you're meant to write measurements in a particular manner. You're meant to write certain things in certain ways, and I feel frankly that's a skill that can be learned. It's not something that, at least for me, is an important thing. Like, you may do the best working drawings, but if your portfolio is not a coherent presentation, it will not interest me. Yep. Then, I would also, this, I'm sure this comment I'll repeat, but what is it that you are trying to show through your portfolio? And again, this may, I'm sure other people may not agree, but I don't really need to see every project in full. Yep. For me, at least, a portfolio is just a sort of a window into your skill set. Now, I don't need to see one large section, two small sections, 3 detailed drawings, 4 axonometrics for every project. For me, it's irrelevant. I would much rather just see one detailed plan in one detailed elevation in another, an exploded axon in a third, a rendered drawing, hand sketch drawing in one, but a computer rendered model in another, because essentially you want to show the best of what you have, rather than put everything I'm a firm believer in having less is more. So for me, almost all your pages were way too much stuff inside it. Like this page that we have over here, for me, just having the detailed drawing on the right, that would have been good enough for me, because you can read the drawing. Because see, frankly, with this, what we have on our page here, you can't really read anything. And you don't expect anyone to read anything. And if you don't expect anyone to read anything, it just becomes a graphical exercise. Now, if you just had one detailed drawing with a little less text, I feel in general also you had way too much text. You reduce the amount of text, people will read it. You have a lot of text, people look at it as a graphic, or at least I do. So personally, I would request you to do a little less text. Also, just when you talk about a project, or when you walk through your portfolio, I would not suggest saying things like, so this is a workshop I did, this is my hand-drawn sketches, because frankly, we can see that. Now, if there's something about that you want me to see, bring it to our attention. But if you're just going to show a sketch and say, these are my sketches, for me, again, it's just, there's no interest in it. Yep. And the last thing that I would say is that the proportion of your page, most of the time people are going to be seeing this either on their laptops or their desktop, which has a particular proportion. I suggest trying to get a page that matches that proportion. Yeah. Because what ends up happening is you try and, like in this case, the width is taking up the full screen, but the height is quite squeezed up, and you're wasting a lot of real estate on the screen space. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Kayzad. I'll just like to remind the viewers who are there that if they have any questions also, they can type it into their question and answer box, and we will take them up towards the end of the presentations. So Gyan, coming back to yours, I agree with most of the comments that Kayzad and Iype have made. So I'd like to just look at one particular page in a little more detail. Yeah, in the first initial pages. So I just felt this being one of the introductions to you. Firstly, I mean, I did like the idea of what you had written, that you can take a simple format and let the projects kind of take the, take their own character and how do you represent them. So there's not over representation in that, with that. But however, I feel that keeping it simple is important, but here there is a little bit of variation which kind of distracts you. So avoiding that kind of distraction and kind of focusing on certain key images or key drawings that you would like to take focus on. So yeah, I felt that this particular CV page, there is a lack of kind of consistency, so that distracts me when I'm looking at it. So for example, whether it's spacing in the text, alignment, the kind of information that you're giving in the index, there is, we do not know where one is kind of looking and trying to understand when you did this and what was the scale of the thing, or was it a group project, or was it a, so there is a little bit of a distraction in the index page. So I would like you to probably accept that working drawing semester 5, which I do get a sense of it, and a little bit in some other places I don't really know what the scale of the project is, or a little more information over there would be helpful. The other thing, whether it's an institute, because when you say climate responsive, it's very broad. It could be an element in a building, or it could be a whole institutional building like what this is. So it's a little deceptive. So something which comes to explain that. The other is, I felt you have, like, what I've observed in the portfolio is there is a very strong kind of a hand you have for sketching and representing with hand. So I just felt that I know that you're trying to show that you know these particular skills and things like that, but this is really not your best image to start the portfolio with. I would have preferred some of the hand-drawn, or maybe you could have fused it. And like what I mentioned here, there's so much of white and blue, and I don't really look at the building because it's not really the strength in this, or this kind of a rendering is not really a strength. However, something like this is much more powerful, and it's a nice evocative sketch. So you can kind of choose what you want to begin with, rather than take a just, I mean, you started off with that software and we understand that you want to also show it, but does that need to become the most dominant image in this project is something that I would be a little hesitant to do. Um, Similarly, I mean, I think the same discussion is broadly what Kayzad and Iype were saying, that focus on a few drawings, but explain them in a lot of detail. The text needs to be legible. I mean, that's one thing we tell everyone, if your text is not legible at the screen, it's kind of have less text, but have it legible. So for example, if you have a key, I can't read what is written below in this, what this room is, or I can't, I mean, is there a particular aspect? Either label the sketch what you're trying to show. And like, I mean, here I know that there are section lines in this, but in the earlier ones, I mean, I do appreciate that you're showing the north, you're showing the scale, you're showing the section lines in these plans, which sometimes portfolios fail to have. So yeah, this is fairly legible, but do they need to be with so many of these kind of, circles? So I think, I mean, largely, yeah, these were the comments I had about your portfolio. Would you like to kind of reply to any of these, or you kind of having?
Rather than reply, I'd just like to understand if the approach of going from semester 6 to then semester 3 was effective in that sense.
According to me, it was. I do think always it's better to start with the latest first, because you want to put your best project first. I mean, best, or what you can say is where you are at right now. So it's easier to understand that through a certain lens rather than starting from the first thing, first project. But I don't know if Kayzad and Iype have a difference of opinion on this.
For me, frankly, the order of images really doesn't make that much of a difference. It makes absolutely no difference to me.
Yeah, to me also, I'm not particularly worried about it. The sequence is not particularly important to me. But I think it sets a narrative in terms of scale. I think that in that sense, it's okay. You know? If the portfolio is short enough and it's not like 50 pages, sometimes people apply with that, this thing, we'd still go through it and probably find what's good in it, you know. But in terms of scale and a narrative, sometimes it's good to go from, you know, whatever your latest project to this thing. But I'm not going to judge somebody based on it. I would probably look at what was good in his portfolio. I won't stop at page one, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Gyan.
Thank you.
Move on to the next person. So this is Nikhil Sharma.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me fine.
Yes, we can hear you, Nikhil.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
giving you the remote.
Okay.
Yeah, you have the remote now, Nikhil.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nikhil Sharma, and I'm a student of MBA School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi, affiliated by Iype University. And this is my portfolio for applying to a 9-month internship, which is a part of the architecture curriculum. And over the academic years, we all worked on larger than life projects, which is something we lose on little details about. So there are times when we cannot, maybe let's just say, design a facade for a particular building or something. And we usually focus on a lot of the macro scale elements of a design, which is something I wanted to take care about while joining a firm. I wanted to work on a variety of projects wherein I could maybe work on little details of a larger project, and then I could actually see them or appreciate them in real life, and then end up looking at how the whole business of architecture works, or how the teams, smaller split teams or different people handle larger projects. Yeah. So this is my CV, and you can see I've done a couple of competitions and I have some experience in freelance graphic design, which you will see at the end of the portfolio as well. And essentially, this was a starting point for where a person could read my architecture analogy, which somehow relates to the basic psyche of a human. So, however, maybe a human perceives smell, space, or a particular image. So, I drive or navigate a human through their own primitive attitude. And accordingly, the type of practice that I actually wanted to work for was someone who does a lot of Indian regional architecture, since I find a lot of architecture currently in India misses that point of Indian regional architecture, and we lie somewhere between taking examples from the Western world and being very vernacular. So there's no middle point, or there's no direction that even students could have while designing. So that's what I wanted to develop over time. This is essentially my architectural style. So yeah, the basics of the portfolio was very simple. I just wanted every project to follow a basic guideline, which is a brief, then a brief description about the site, some sketches here and there, and essentially what I wanted to design over there. So whatever the problem the site has and how I'm solving it and how the form actually developed is what I wanted to deliver in probably just one page. I didn't extend it over 2 pages, just 1 page. And then I wanted to focus on the mega drawings, as we call it. The mega drawings is just let's just say it's an axonometric or exploded axonometric view, which I feel is superior for a portfolio, since just the plans or just the sections or just the elevations do not contain enough information to give in with just one image, while an axonometric could give you a lot more information. As you can see in this particular drawing, you could see the humans interacting with each of the floors and how the classrooms are placed in this primary school, and how the louvers are placed, or however the vertical circulation works. And I didn't want to clutter each page, so you could probably see a maximum of 2 to 3 images, maybe perspective drawings that could showcase all my Photoshop potential because I've been doing Photoshop for a long time. I think it's about 6 years since I started. So I did have a lot of experience on Photoshop and Illustrator. Then I wanted to, of course, showcase that. So throughout the portfolio, you could see the blue theme is consistent, which is something that could either take you by boldness or by surprise, which is something some people may be sour about, but it's something that I stick to. And since it is high contrast, so it actually drives you to look at certain images. And there are times when the plans or the sections do not have typical colors, wherein you can see, especially here, where the grass is yellow and the trees are yellow as well, which describes a little bit of the autumn. But I deliberately did that to have to maintain that contrast, since obviously blue is complementary to orange. So again, this is the 3D section and a type of mega drawing that I was talking about. Just one drawing and little details or little perspective aspects of it over the top. Then this is, I did have a model for the housing as well, but then I discovered there was a way that I could actually make a 3D rendering of that looked like a model, which was very interesting. So I did that here. And all the cover pages of the projects have this sequence that I name them. I name the semester they worked on, the type of the project, and their brief description. And then I continue to this one image that could sort of gist you about the project. Yeah, similar sequence as well. Whatever I worked on, a simple massing, sites, blocking, planning. And specifically, since this is housing project, I had to work intensively on landscaping, which is why I have 3 drawings for landscaping as well, and materials were a special focus. Then again, a good example where the grass isn't green, it's actually blue, and the water is orange, actually pink. So this could actually either take you by surprise or by boldness, which is, I don't know, whatever the decision I took, but it definitely attracts you at least to the plan, or actually makes you focus on what that is. Again, another type of mega drawing that I was talking about for the housing. This gives you an overall gist on how each of the structures are cut in the between, and then how each of the towers functions, whatever units they have in just one core, and how the services functions, which could give the employer a general idea on how I design, or on at least that I know how housing works, essentially. And we have just exploded axonometric of the view of the units and little spaces that I actually didn't want to include, but I thought some people might notice. Again, you could see I didn't have a lot of perspective views in my portfolio, which is something deliberate, but I made sure that I did include all my modeling capabilities using these clay renders that actually show the sciography between each of the structures. Then we have the largest project here, which is an urban design project in Delhi itself. I'm not sure if anyone, if everyone has seen the site. This is actually in Shahjahabad, Old Delhi. This is the Old Delhi railway station. So this was also a very deliberate idea that I took everything blue and the humans, which were the essential focus of every design. I took them into bright yellow. Then of course, this is urban design. So I wanted to showcase all my analysis capabilities on how we've analyzed the site in terms of activities that goes on there. And again, the existing conditions, the traffic analysis, some sketches, and yeah, I tried to reduce as much text I could, but I did include some text so people could have some sort of reference if they wanted to read. But my drawings or the graphics were enough to get a little gist. Again, since the landscaping was very important, I had different types of representation techniques for the landscape too. Again, I didn't use an axonometric for this one, but this was a site plan that could explain all the the whole landscaping part or the sciography part, or how the spaces work, function, and how humans interact with the rest of the environment, just with a plan. So yeah, this was essentially the project. I tried to include all the little things that could take you through, or whatever questions you could actually have through the site. I've tried to answer that. And then this is one of the competitions that me and my friend did for NASA Industrial Design Trophy. We won a citation for this. This was a experiential design project, of course, where we had to design a product that could be produced in mass in India, of course. And then it could take your consciousness, or it could take you physically somewhere else. So we decided on a shower, where the shower water could form a shower curtain with the environment, and you could actually interact with all the senses, the smell, the touch, and everything in the shower itself. Then I had the working drawings at the last. We didn't really have a lot of working drawings, but I did have some sort of experience with basic building construction. So I made sure I included that, and included some sort of sciography with that, because I really think that flat lines don't mean a lot until they have some sort of real life significance. So I made sure to include the sciography as well, to understand just by the look of it. Then at the end, I had some poster work, some Photoshop work that I did for my college fest and my dissertation cover page. And then some of my freelance graphic design work, which I've done over the years, just to give you a gist that I could actually make creatives and sort of flyers and stuff. Yeah, and that's it. That's the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikhil. Kayzad, would you like to go first on this one?
Yeah, sure.
Manisha, I just need to step out for a minute. I'll just be back. You can continue. Okay,
Sure.
let's just be back.
I feel when you start, when you were speaking, you are relatively clear. But for me at least, there's a big gap between your speaking and your actual portfolio. I feel your intent is very clear. That is very evident through this very particular blue that you've sort of taken forward across the entire portfolio. But I feel in general, there's just way too much stuff. I liked your drawings of, your idea of that mega drawing, or the your one star of the project. I would say two things to that. One is your mega drawing needs to have a lot more than the remaining drawings of the project. Okay. There is, if you see this image that's on the page, and if you go to the next one, in terms of scale, in terms of size, in terms of the way the pages are treated, the drawing is treated, there's not much of a difference. So unless if you had not told me about this idea that you had in your mind that you have a mega drawing, I would not get that out. And that's where I'm saying I feel there's a slippage between what you're saying and what you're doing. Also, in terms of this mega drawing, I'm going to say two quite opposite things. One, they should showcase your different skills. Okay, so while you might have a plan in this one, which is some exploded axon, you should have a completely different skill in the next one, a different kind of drawing in the other one. So maybe one is a plan, one is a section, one is a detail. Like if you just go back, like this section, it doesn't show much. Yeah, but if you could spend 10 more hours on this drawing and made it your star, it shows a different skill set. Yeah. Now, the other thing I'm going to say about this drawing is exactly opposite to what I just said. Is otherwise make your drawings identical. Okay, and when you make them identical, you need to have a more particular way of drawing than what you're drawing over here. You look at either Sana's drawings or Ishigami's drawings. There's a very particular way in which they draw. So if you want to have a repetitive kind of an image in your portfolio, it needs to be unique. You can't. It cannot be this generic. Yep. Then in general, I feel, and this is happening in the last presentation as well, and frankly, it happens in most of the interviews that we have, where people spend a lot of time telling us what drawing it is, where the site is, and what's all around the site, rather than the idea of their project. Yep. Maybe I missed it, but I don't remember you talking about any idea of any project. You spoke about the site, you spoke about what is there, and this is your graphic design, but you never spoke about what it is that you did. What is your thought process? Because frankly, that's what's more important. I mean, the fact that you're doing a school and you're doing it in this context and there's a hill on one side and a river on the other is sort of irrelevant. But how did you respond to that in short is for me a very important thing. Also, just one small thing, on your first page, where I mean, I like your format is very clear, where you start off with the the first page meaning a project first page. Like you start off with the name of the project, you write a little brief, then you have one image. Over here, I'd suggest you also put your faculty's name. Because I feel that gives, because quite often when you're applying for a job, if that's the faculty name is someone that the person recognizes,
right.
That's a conversation starter. And when you start having conversations beyond your portfolio, you're more likely to be remembered. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Iype, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Yeah, Nikhil, I noticed you're wearing a blue shirt.
Yes.
So,
This wasn't intentional at all.
quite a few of us are. So, yes, I'll probably start backwards. You kept stressing on your graphic design skills and
Yes.
what you've learned. I think it's good if you interact with people in the graphic this thing, because I find the graphics a little bit overpowering, honestly speaking, and it becomes, I don't know what Kayzad has covered. I was out for a minute, and I find it very difficult to read information, so I think it's good if I think that you have good technical skills when it comes to, probably the software and everything else. But I think it's good that you work on how you communicate with graphics, because you started and you stressed it a couple of times, I would go back to that. I found the portfolio a little bit disturbing to read. This blue and white graphic is a little bit, you're not able to read anything clearly, There are a couple of things which they're not in any sequence that I'm mentioning. I think for me personally, it's very important to see a plan. I didn't see any plans, if I remember correctly. So an axo can be used. That's a site plan. An axo can be used to communicate how parts come together. But to me, finally, I need to see a plan to judge this. And that's a personal thing. I really cannot judge design without a plan. So I found that a little bit, insufficient on that front. So even now this image which is on the screen, it appears more like a developer's. So this may be a direction that the school has probably taken you with. But certain officers will be looking at plans, and I think it's very important that you share plans. And even if I look at the right, there's a model photograph over there. Show the full model. There's no reason why you need to show one, a zoomed in view which gives somebody a better idea of what that model is. But as of now, it's nothing. It's just it really doesn't convey anything. So I think that's very important to me. And I think the methods of communication, like even those 3D sections which are taken off SketchUp or whatever software you're using. I think there were some long sections. Yeah, like these. They don't really communicate to me. I find them a little bit, you need to draw. So I think so just as much as we can see that you have skills on, in terms of software and graphic technical skills, we're not able to see an aspect of you which actually touches on, hand skills, which is very strong in Gyan's portfolio, which came in earlier. We're not able to see another aspect of you. So it seems to be limited to, this. And I think the graphics, like even when I look at this image on, can you go to the previous one? Previous slide. So you should choose your best front. Go ahead. Sorry. Probably the next slide after this. No, go ahead. No, that same museum view or whatever you were showing earlier. Yeah, go back one slide. Yeah. So I think like when you look at this, there are 5 pieces of information. Choose the best one, no? And just put that, like when I look at it, maybe there's that meditation hall gallery is sufficient to communicate. You don't need all this blue stuff at the bottom, the museum plaza on the left. And that tells us enough of what your skills are. And another thing is, like, I think you've used a lot of terms, some Kluwer and things like that. I think for somebody who's reading a portfolio, if you intend to say something, it's good to explain what it is. If it's beyond the regular
Kluwer was
language.
just something, a name topology that I adapted. It's not. It was just inspired by the main focus of the project, which are the louvers in this primary school.
Okay,
so I named it
louver, and then you can add a phrase below it, no?
Right. Okay.
You get an understanding of what it is, but I don't know. It's just a word. It doesn't make too much sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's good to spend some time on that. Yeah, and so sometimes guys will look at a little bit extra. So even when you look at this same project, I think climate. I don't know whether climate and Louver came together, but there are a lot of things which don't make sense from a climatic perspective. So you should just study those. When you're applying, it's a much wider audience that you're applying to. For this thing. So you should see whether things somebody can catch on to. Things which are not reading correctly. So I was not able to understand your climatic response to north, south, east, west. Didn't make sense to me. When I looked at that, when you were skimming through it. So I think it's good to, when you're putting a portfolio, put 5 pages, but they're the best pages and they convey what your this thing is, rather than putting 20 pages, which, are really not very, don't communicate a lot about what you want to say. You're not putting your best foot forward. Yeah. I think that's it from me.
Okay. Thanks, Iype. So I mean, yeah, I think there were some great comments here for you, Nikhil, which I mean, the most obvious one being that I felt the graphics, we know that you're skilled in graphics, but the thing is what starts happening is it starts becoming overpowering. So when you're reading the portfolio, you're also kind of trying to look for that, information on that page, which sometimes tends to get lost. The classic one would be the working drawing page where, firstly, there's just way too much information. There's just way too much information and you actually don't start looking at it. You're looking at it like a graphic design exercise rather than the content or anything being understood. And some of them are very generic. So one of the things which I'd like to emphasize over here is it's for a lot of the portfolios, rather than putting a collection of working drawings, you can probably highlight one particular detail which you have worked on, which was unique or something that, you would like to showcase. And that can be explained in a lot more detail with the adequate text, rather than putting these sort of, we know we've all done these plates in school. We know that's what you all are doing, and you all probably are just kind of, copy pasting half those sort of. But what was unique in yours, or what you would like to develop, is something that we would have, kind of enjoyed looking at more about your thing. And the other thing also, like which I mentioned, I wish there was a diversity of skills which one can look at. So in a portfolio, typically you do want to see your strength, but you also want to see that you have a cross section of skills. So whether you can sketch, whether you can make a model, whether you can draw, whether you can make a rendering. So I mean, those kind of things also we do tend to look at, because it talks about, also how you have understood those mediums and then have chosen this medium. So it kind of comes to a progression rather than this being the only sort of beginnings for your portfolio. I think largely, I mean, reducing the number of slides, but what I did like is, you give a clear introduction and then you go on to your next, and then you make one key large image. I mean, that by kind of progression is, there is a lot of clarity in that sort of, idea of how you move. But I just feel like a lot of other things are cluttered, and I mean, there are no plans. Even I was looking for the plans of the drawings, and a little more information about the project, which sometimes tends to get lost, and sometimes it's repetitive. Like for example, this plan along with this is almost the same scale, so it felt a little unnecessary. So you're kind of repeating this over here, and also because I know that you've chosen the format of an A4, I mean the screen size, which is great because the clarity is good. But when images get cut into half, you need to compose them also in that manner. Your composition needs to respond to that, rather than half the image kind of going on this page and the half of it kind of coming on this page. So I think, I mean, largely in terms of formatting and stuff, there is a little bit of an issue over here. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. So also there are some questions which are coming in, which I think, Shantanu, do you want to ask a question which came in? And some of the questions are very generic. So I mean, it's mainly for us panelists. So we can take up a few now, and we can take up a few towards the later. Shantanu, you need to unmute yourself.
I won't read it verbatim, but I'll just explain what the question is trying to say. Is that this, it's Uttara Parik, who says that, if we are applying to 10 different types, she says 10 different types of firms, and we are making portfolios, how would we curate it? Because they're all different firms. So the question is about whether we do have to make different portfolios. So if any of you guys want to take it up and answer it.
Yeah, I don't think you have to make different portfolios. You just have to have a lens with which you're presenting your work. Now, whether you apply to firm A, B, or C, your portfolio is sort of the same. Your interests are the same. What you want to showcase is the same. So I don't think it's a matter of, curating the portfolio to an office. It's a curating the portfolio and the way you present that portfolio in a way that best describes your skill set and intentions.
Yeah, and also one more thing, Uttara, like what I feel is, when a student, like for example, when Gyan said that he was interested in a firm which does material exploration, not only one firm. I mean, I'm presuming that the 10 firms that one would apply, that he would apply to, would all have a certain kind of an emphasis who do these kind of material explorations. Portfolio automatically kind of, and it is also his interest. It's where he comes from. So I think that is where it is critical to kind of understand what process or what, what aspect of architectural practice you would like to work with, as well as what your interest is and whether they align. So I think there could be something which could be fairly generic if you don't know, but I think otherwise, if you do have a particular direction, the portfolio automatically would start kind of working in that. And yeah, I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, so to me, yeah, I think you can only show what you're good at, so that you can't change your portfolio for 10 different offices. Honestly speaking, you can only show what your strengths are. And I think if you're applying for, if the discussion is specific to internship, I think you should just focus on doing one standard solution and target offices which you feel you're inclined towards and hope for the best. But I guess, I think there was one girl who sent in a portfolio who was also talking about studies after. then you may align your portfolio specific to a university that you're applying to. They may have a direction, you may adapt it a bit for different universities. But I think for an internship level, I think a standard portfolio, you don't need to adapt it for different firms. Definitely not, personally.
Okay. Should we go? We'll be taking more questions towards the end, so please keep sending in your questions. There are a couple more which we'll also take up. Okay. So Nikhita?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes. Okay. Just 1 second. Yeah, I'll just give you the remote. Yes, Nikita.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi, I'm Nikhita Manu. I'm a recent graduate from KRVIA in Bombay. This portfolio is a compilation of the first 3 years of my architectural degree projects, and this was made at the beginning of my 4th year when I was preparing to do my internship in the second half of my 4th year. 4th year, yeah. So to begin with, to talk about what kind of firm I'm looking forward to work with, I think I sort of personally, from my personal understanding of myself, I enjoy and would prefer to work with a firm which sort of looks at each project as a opportunity to explore something new in their kind of work, and looks at, and I tend to look at the sensitivity a project shows towards the context and towards how innovative it is in terms of bringing about the life of that building in terms of whatever the respective program it contains in. And so that is and how it uses these tectonics, like we say, the materials or the volumetric expressions, etc., how it uses these tools to bring forth this expression. So that's a general framework under which I would like to put my projects in, and I would like to work in similar grounds in the future. And about the scale of the practice, I think I prefer a firm which involves both at the scale of building a private home as well as an as well as a institution with a public front. And that I think that gives me an opportunity to put my mind and hands in on both and on the detailing of both of these various scales. I would like to keep myself occupied in both of these scales in that sense, and that's a criteria I look forward for when I am applying to a firm. And I like a firm with a tight workforce, because as a fresh graduate, at least I think a small workforce would be good for me in terms of personal learning and collaborations. Yeah, so that's about that. And in terms of how I've made the portfolio, one thing is that I think I've tried to use white space wisely. At least I've attempted to, and tried to keep the number of pages minimal, and I have distributed the text along the project so that it's easier to navigate, and I've not concentrated text in that sense. And every project of every semester, that the method to introduce the project has always been the entry point. Sometimes, however, the studio introduced us to it. Sometimes it is the visual drawing, sometimes it is a collaborative side drawing which we've made, sometimes it's a personal understanding. But the entry point into the project is first introduced, then I have gone into the design development, wherein I've elaborately tried to show the process. And the process they're all quick tracing sketches and quick models which I've made. But I think I want the viewer to also understand that part about myself, where I think I enjoy the process of evolving a design. So I've given ample space for that. And then then the next spread goes on to the final drawings of every project. And even there, I have tried to show or emphasize more on one particular drawing of that project, which explains the essence of that project, which could be which describes the event, that because most of them are public institutions. So I've tried to describe the events of each of those through each particular drawing. And now, yeah. Yeah, so this is the CV where I have also given the content and a brief introduction about myself on the left corner. And yeah, and then as I said, again, this was a sixth semester. This was a sixth semester project, which the project is introduced through a collaborative drawing which I have made with my other classmates. And this drawing gives a gist of a drawing and a little bit of, if you read into the text, it gives you the gist of what the atmosphere of the precinct around the dargah is. And then it locates my project within it. And these are the process models on the right corner. And the text describes what was the strategy of design into it. And again, the model place gives you an impression that the building sort of creates this open space, and the models are also an attempt at creating these these open spaces within this busy context of the city. And yeah, then moving ahead, this is the final drawings which I had made. Again, I have given emphasis to one particular drawing, and this is a drawing which breaks away from the technicalities of traditional architectural drawing. And but it rather tries to show that in that busy city context, the building creates that open space in the center for the building as a private space, as well as for the city or a part of the street. It's trying to engage in that sense. So this drawing tries to explain or express that event which can take place in the city at the backdrop of these historical monuments which was built in the past. And in the right corner, there is a wall section which sort of gives you a small glimpse of the technicality of how the construction is. It only shows that there is a heavy bottom, and then there's a light steel structure which comes out as arches, which is expressed through that. And then the section gives you an understanding of how it cuts through the ground to make these spaces. And then moving on from there, this is my fifth semester project. This is again a public building. And it's again a public institutional so it's a public institutional project. And here again, I've tried to show the entry point into the project was through some process sketches which I had made on site. This was a redevelopment of an existing magistrate court. We had to redevelop the entire thing in Bombay. So it was, the entry point was through by understanding a user's time frame of work in that building. So that was the entry point, unlike the previous project. And then it goes on to the process of evolving the project. And in this case, I've given ample space for that, because I think personally for this project, I have invested a lot of iterations and explorations in creating the concept in several manners. So the models in the right corner largely show you the formal approach, where I'm trying to create a disintegrated space, but unified by some kind of a top bar on top. And then at the drawings process sketches show I've been trying to experiment with these circulation patterns and what is the experience one has through that circulation. So that is so this shows how the project has evolved. And again from there it moves to the final drawings. And in the final drawings, and in the final drawing, again, I've given emphasis to this one section in the plan. And that section, and I think for this particular project, I think the section was able to describe the event of that building, of the courtyard being an intersection point, and if it's a library which connects these two other points, and if it's a corridor. I think it's I thought the section was the tool to describe the life of the building in this case. And the plan very well tries to show the pattern of circulation and tries to show the experience one can get through that. And because of which I chose to hand render this particular project. And this was charcoal on cartridge. And so this kind of shows my skills for on my hand drawing skills in that sense. So then this is the working drawings for the same project. And I think personally for me, doing the working drawing for this one particular project was a little difficult at the third year level. But and in that sense, I have not shown, and each of them had to be set out in a different manner, and each of them had their own individual center line. So I have shown only a particular part of the entire building, but I've shown the larger scheme of the entire building plan on the right corner, and I've taken up one portion of it, and I've shown the plan section and the beamed details and an elevation of the same building. So it is just one portion of the entire building, but it also on the right hand side shows that there have been different columns which is required because of the shape of the building, and each of them have their own footing setting up plan for their footing and things like that. So this is the working drawing part of the same building, previous one. And another thing which I've tried to keep in as a format is that for every project, at the top corner, I've written what the project is, where it's located, and who was my mentor and what studio it was. So that and the order of putting the site, the project entrance, the design development and final drawings is the theme of how I think my portfolio has been organized. Yeah, and this is again a second year measure drawing project, which was in Chakrata. This, I think we had a different approach at looking at measure drawings, which is not in the regular fashion. And therefore the right corner is a collaborative drawing with other team members. And the leftmost corner ones are the ones which I have personally done, and they have been written as such. And the method of understanding the measure drawings for our batch at that point was to use the measure drawing as a tool to explain the narrative of that village, explain stories about the village. So that, which is what the collage or the grid shaped drawings show you. It takes you through the narrative of a particular person, a festival, and that story which happens in that particular cluster of houses. And the text sort of tries to explain that as one reads through. And then from the entry point to this project was the measure drawing, and from there it goes into the project which I had made. And here again I've chosen one particular drawing which describes the event of that building, and in this case it is a three-dimensional drawing, where I think this was the most useful tool to express that the building sits at the entrance of the site as a gateway, and it creates this in between public space for people to pass through, and at both sides there are these other public functions which the villagers can use. And this was a transport hub in the village, which was a program also which was innovated as such that this was something not there in the village, and it was a new introduction, and I thought it would be apt for it to be a gateway into the village or to be perceived as such. So this drawing was expressed as a three-dimensional one to sort of bring that idea forth. And again, these the sections and the axonometrics were hand drafted and painted. So those show my skills at the second year level. And again, there are some views which I had tried to articulate at that point. There's a wall section also, which is not exactly accurate, but with my knowledge in second year, that's what I had done. And yeah, so those are all hand drawn. And so I don't seem to have the control. I think I went far ahead.
Nikhita, you'll have to wrap up in a couple of minutes, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's the last page. Yeah, and then this shows a glimpse of some landscape projects which I had. That's a landscape studio which sort of tries to introduce to the firm that I have some sort of background with understanding the geography, the contours and hydrology, etc. And then it was at the beginning of the fourth year, and hence we had just been introduced to urban design. Therefore, there are only particular drawings which I had done at that point, and which also shows that I'm being introduced to these subjects. Then it wraps up with an internship I had done before my fourth year, and this was also an attempt to express that I have some previous understanding of how a firm works, and some these drawings are drawings which I had prepared to make the BOQ. So it shows the fixtures and toilet details and furniture details, etc. So this was it sums up with the previous internship experience. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nikhita.
Manisha, you can go first.
Okay, sure. So, Nikita, a couple of things which I felt, I'm going to actually go back. I'm going to start with your CV again. Okay, so the first thing which actually I find a slight bit of a problem, you know what I'm saying? Your whole portfolio, when you're presuming this is made for an online portfolio, the viewing becomes a little difficult because you've again taken two landscape formats. So, like what Kayzad was mentioning in the first one, it's not either it gets cut off or we have to kind of scroll left and right to kind of see it. So, that is something that I would avoid in a portfolio. The other thing is also, you know, when I look at your relevant experience over here, I understand this is specific to since you've already worked prior, which a lot of interns wouldn't have that. But since you have that, I noticed that you've written over here that you've worked in two different things, but you know, involved in the making of working drawings. So there are two things which information that I would look for. Exactly how much time did you work there for? Yeah. So whether it was 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, summer, that should kind of be there. And the other thing was also the scale of the project, because you've written it in a very generic manner, working drawings and interior design. So I don't really get a sense of what your kind of, you know, what your role was and what your experience really is. Yeah, so that was another thing. Then I also found it a little difficult to read the content page, because what I felt is 1 and 2 is actually the same project, 3, 4, and 5 is the same project, and 6 and 7 is the same project. But you choose to kind of make it as a separate sort of a you know, structure, which it took me a little bit of a time to understand why did you separate them, or could they have just been 1, 2, and 3 and have had subparts in that which kind of talk about group design or site analysis, or you know, whatever your site study, or what do you call them, your mm, trips, your RSPs, related study program. Then you have design development, and then you have your actual intervention. So I think, I mean, it could have been divided up in that way, because it was a little distracting to read it as a separate project. Though I did like this idea of yours of having this one large image which you done, and I wish, I mean, it was more clear for each of those three projects on which images you would select. And yeah, I think, I mean, some of the other information which I felt was missing, there was sometimes too much information on a page, too much text on a page, and you know, rather than so much of information, I would have preferred lesser sketches but more uh, kind of, you know, blown up images of specific kind of critical ones. Maybe there could be a couple, but here there's just too much. So one, and the text is very unstructured, so it's actually kind of going in different parts of the sheets and things like that. So a little more structuring over here and emphasizing what are the sort of key you know, inputs that you had on this, or you would like to emphasize on. So yeah, I mean, these are largely the few points that I had for you. Iype or Kayzad, any of you guys?
I can go.
Yeah.
See, when you started talking, you spoke about white space, which I thought was kind of nice. That being said, I don't think your portfolio really had too much white space at all. Like, I mean, maybe the first 2 or 3 pages had a little bit of empty space, but as you scroll down, um, I feel you've tried to pack in as much stuff as possible within each page, which I feel is um, actually detrimental to your portfolio, because you do actually have some really, really nice drawings. Like this drawing, I think the one drawing that you had above this, you had a black and white axonometric. These are really, really nice drawings. And I think you're doing them disservice by, you know, not allowing them to take over the entire page, not allowing them to get the full attention. Because if you see the drawing, I mean, if you see this page right now, you have a drawing on the left, and you have text with like 2, 3 different font sizes on the middle. Then you have two very nice looking sections. And but I feel there's just so much information on a page that the good stuff gets lost within the bad. Yep. I also feel when you when you talk about the projects, I mean, I feel you should use these good drawings that you have to describe your project and the intent of your project. Again, I feel similar to as well as when the person before this, where I said, you need to talk about your project. You cannot talk about your site. You actually took it a step forward and you said my text describes the strategy without telling us what your strategy was. Which, I mean, you have to also understand when people are going to be, having you over for an interview, probably going to interview 6, 8, 10 people for one position. And you need to be clear in what you say. Also, and I know this is a KRVI problem, but talk a little less. Yeah, I know this is a KRVI problem, but we need to learn to be brief in what we speak. Because, I mean, before you started talking about your portfolio, you spoke for about 5 or 6 minutes. On the first page, we only had your name on it and you spoke for 5 to 6 minutes. I just feel, I know as architects, we love talking about ourselves and we love talking about our work. But the other person, it can get tiring. So you want them to ask you more. You don't want them to start daydreaming. So you give them just the salient features in both drawings and in words, and let them sort of probe into asking you more. Because I personally would say you lose people by just talking so much and showing so much on a page. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has been covered by Manisha and this thing. I want to ask you something in one sentence. What do you think is your strongest skill?
I think my strongest skill personally is to express my design or work towards developing or iterating designs and try to create in one sentence. I think my design skills is I think what I would put forward for.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think it's important to realize what is your strongest skill, and that should come through very strongly. So something that Kayzad touched on earlier, this drawing on the left is very nice, and I think on the previous project also, So you actually didn't need to get into a lot of the other information, Uh, yeah, like this drawing is very nice. So I would have shown this drawing and a zoomed in detail of this drawing, because at this scale you can't see anything, And suppose you had this drawing, and it's a lot more clarity, and then you had a zoomed in detail of this drawing, it communicates a lot of information, and then you have a decent looking model, okay? But all that information on the right study process models are irrelevant, So how do you take these three pieces of the best pieces of the information or your best skills and communicate them? So I think that is very important to us, when we are reviewing portfolios. So like Kayzad said, I'm just saying, I'm not sure about the topping this thing. How many books on architecture have you read in the past 1 month?
In the past 1 month, I keep reading. I think my interest was reading got
No,
on much.
in one sentence, quick. How
Sorry,
many books?
in the past 1 month, I have read a couple of books, but not finished all of them. But I've been reading multiple books at the same time.
Architecture or other books?
I read both. I'm interested more in reading architecture, but I read architecture and certain political readings also sometimes.
Portfolios is not going to read all this thing that's written on your screen. You get me? It's very important to distill it to the bare minimum, So I think it's important to emphasize what your skills are, And I saw this drawing and I saw this model, and you should shout about that. You shouldn't shout about a bad study model at the right of the screen. So I think it's very important to realize what your strengths are and kind of be bold about it and communicate that. And maybe in the other drawings, if we move ahead, just go to the next sheet. Yes. No, next one. Yeah. So all this to me is not very important to me, But when you show I look at the plan. For me, it's very important. Go to the next sheet. Next. Yeah, go back. I think finally what's most important is the plan at the right or the left, sorry, of your screen, and how do you communicate whatever you have to say about that the best way, So I think it's important, like even if you had made some effort on that drawing to show internal space, outside space, So you finished your semester, you got your grades, everything. Just do a little bit of Photoshop on that drawing to show what is outside space. And you can communicate so much more on this drawing to an audience, who's looking at your portfolio. So making these small attempts to actually communicate your portfolio, are very important, So if you just colored all the outside space, you could have said so much more about this design rather than all these sections and some detail and some small view of a model. Really not important. So I think those things are important to decide how you want to communicate and how you quickly. Yeah. I think a lot of the other points have been covered. Yeah.
Yeah, just one more small thing that I'd like to add in this is also, your section lines. You need to give that information because you have these two sections, but we don't know where they're cut from. So just a little bit of information about that and what are these different spaces, if it could have a small legend. So keep the text minimal, but it needs to be informative enough that one can actually, there are some of us who try to actually read the drawings, So we're not looking at it as only a graphic exercise, but if we can't understand the project, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, there's no legend and no scale and nothing, no? So I think those things, at least for some of us older, old school listeners, we find that disturbing. When there's no plan, no north sign, no legend, no scale. But if the plan interests me also, I don't look at it, no, because then it just becomes a graphic exercise beyond that. It's important to put those, to distill that information correctly. Yeah. Good. That's it from me.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikhita. Kashish, I've given you the remote now. Kashish, hi, are you there?
Yeah, I am. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah. Now
Okay. Yeah, got it. Hi, I'm Kashish. I'll be a fifth-year student in a week at School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. I've always been intrigued by the typology of projects which are user-centric, influence experiential value, and promote social and environmental sustainability. We as architects create buildings while prioritizing those with the greatest positive social impact. And I aspire to be a practical inventor, honestly. Thus, functional, impactful, sustainable, site derivative are just few keywords which direct the viewer towards my interest. This portfolio was curated in June-July 2019 as a part of my application for the academic internship of 6 months from January to June 2020. The intent of the portfolio was to put front the same ideologies and the skill set I acquired throughout my academic term in college, with minimal, easy to understand graphics, diagrams, and text, maintaining my identity and form of art to express the same. It was a multi-layer process to curate this portfolio from drafting ideas on paper to visualizing them virtually. I put the substance along with the aesthetic rather than aesthetic covering up for the substance. So the portfolio is structured into 3 segments. First, the curriculum vitae, and before was the introduction. And then I have my architectural projects, and the latter part intensifies my drive for photography and art. Inclusiveness of projects of different scales as to demonstrate my flexibility for the same. Now we'll walk you through the rest of my portfolio. First, vocational hub. Every project has been composed in a tile format for a consistent set template to be read easily visually, with a brief description about the project on the left and a small graphic giving the gist of the portfolio, like intriguing the point where it's okay. Focusing on my approach and process, the graphics here explain the context through a simple illustration on the middle graphic, and the block diagrams on the right exhibit the values derived from the context and its accumulation with the concept. From left to right, zoning and concept diagrams with the abstract site plan illustration. The following diagram is a simple illustration of how the user circulates throughout the structure, followed by the solar analysis on the right. My goal was to finish the portfolio in time and not compromise on the quality, and to apply on time. So I chose to generate drawings in Views and Revit and all the 3D softwares I work on, and post-produce them using Adobe Suite. Highlighting the conclusive values of the project, the surreal art on the right demonstrates how the project helps people urbanize. Moving on to the next project called Inscape. It's based on the TOD concept. On the right, we have the gist of the graphic giving the gist of the project, and on the left, we have a brief description of the project. Similarly, for this project, the same approach was taken forward, my storyline being strict in order, that is site, context, concept, design, and its conclusive values. And the same storyline adapts to all the projects. I'm not able to. Yeah, so similarly, we have the graphics explaining the quantitative aspects, and on the right, we have an abstract site view. On the right, I have my drawings, plans placed in isometric view. And on the left, again, the conclusive surreal art I did to explain the conclusive values of my project. Sectional view, and on the right we have small diagrams explaining the details of the design. Then we have countenance. Countenance actually means expression. So it's a project for an interpretation center at Bhojpur. Again, the same format. For this project, I want to demonstrate the experiential value of the interpretation center. So I simply walk through sections. Site highlights and concept, and a small site plan. And the sections which I was talking about to explain the experiential value and how a person transits from one space to the other. So now this project, this was a documentation project that we did for Louis Kahn Trophy for the NASA convention 2018-19. I was involved in the documentation analysis and for the art direction for the same. So here I highlight what the site is and what is its key value along with the storyline of the same. And here I conclude my observations and analysis with 2 sketches and a simple graphic. Halchal, it was a small urban scale project taken up for an international competition called Unbox in the year 2017. Site highlights, problems in site, identification of the same, and mapping the same through a small graphic, easy to understand. And then the design, along with its from left to right, highlighting the bigger aspects of design. And as we go towards the right, we get into the minimal values of how the design affects the human. So now, as I said, this third part of my portfolio intensifies my drive for photography and art. These are some urban sketches I did while on my study trip in Ahmedabad. My digital art. This was a small industrial design project we did in first year for the complex of Van Vihar. Thank you. This portfolio helped me to get into a lot of firms while I concluded to intern at Sameepa Dora and Associates for the 6 months from Jan to June. Thank you.
Kayzad or Iype, would you guys like to go first? Any of you?
Sure. See, in general, I kind of like the portfolio. It was the first one which I felt was not completely overcrowded. You did have a theme, visual structure that you carried forward throughout the project, throughout the portfolio, and I felt quite a few times, like this drawing on the right over here. There were quite a few drawings that you did which were not really the typical plan section elevation, but it was trying to do something a bit more, which I personally kind of liked. I do wish there was a bit of more, maybe like one proper detailed plan. But that's something maybe you could have showed later or something like that. But in general, I thought this portfolio was pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's the same thing I've mentioned earlier. So I think it's important, like you have the previous, go to the previous slide. Yeah, so I think it's good that you have a capability in making axonometrics and things like that. But to me, always, I look at an axo as a means by which you communicate how parts come together, or circulation works, but you need to see a plan to really judge the design, and at least in our office, it's very important to be able to judge that. So I see the lack of plans, which I'm not very comfortable with personally. I would have removed the section on photographs of Adalaj, and I don't know which stepwell it is. The thing is, you may think it's important, but we've all seen photographs of Adalaj or any other stepwell, and unless your photograph is 300 times better than the other photographs I've seen, I'm not really going to stay on it, so it's very important to, so a lot of the other skills like you've shown at the end, the photographs and all, I think you could have eliminated that from the portfolio, and yeah, I was not able, to me, I would require, I need more clarity in the portfolio where things are communicated. Like I look at, if you move ahead, so as a presentation of communication, I think it's good. I think it's subtle in its colors. It doesn't jar you, this thing. But I was not able to read a lot of information in these kind of drawings. Go back. Yeah, I was not able to read a lot of in some of these slides. If you go back another slide. Yeah. So I'm really not able to understand the information on this page, and even if you go slightly ahead, there's one on observation and conclusion, what you mentioned. So it's very important to me, very important that you, yeah, go ahead. It was a yellow image. Yeah. So I didn't see the content over here, You're saying observation and conclusion, and there's an image over there, but to me, I'm not reading any information that's coming through. So to me, it's very important what is, I'm not going to read all that at the end of the day. If it was one phrase, I would have read it.
Yeah. So the diagram on the right, which is the circular diagram, which has a tinge of yellow, that is the diagram which illustrates the observations and conclusions we made while on our analysis.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I like the fact that things are toned down a bit, and you have good graphic skills. But I wish you had communicated a bit more in your plans and other drawings, sections and things like that. I would like to see that. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Kashish, hi. Okay, so I do like the layout. I think there's a lot of clarity and it's fairly simple, and the focus does remain the project. And you've kind of tried to use different kinds of drawings to represent the idea, which I think is all very positive. I think in a couple of projects I felt there was a slight gap. I'll just highlight it where. Like for example, something like this. So you've already done the introduction where here you telling us a bit, but when you go on to this slide, sort of FAR area and the permissible, I mean that's a little unnecessary. I think some of these things could have been edited out, kind of keeping with the same flow like you had earlier, that you just keep what is essential. So you have something which is evocative written above, and then suddenly we have an area statement, which I think one could do without. The other thing is also like again, if there would have been a proper plan over here. I know you've shown your section lines, but honestly, I mean, your sections, when I go to the next page, um, have this sort of very kind of, the quality, the emphasis is so much on the rendering but you don't read it. You don't kind of know what spaces there are because the key is over here. So you try to go back and forth. But if there was a little more clarity in this plan, maybe the site plan could have been a smaller thing, and the larger plan could have been over here. Then the legend also would make more sense, because I'm sure you did have that, but you've chosen not to kind of put it over here. So I'm looking at the meditation space, but I don't know where this space is in this section, and I'm trying to correlate sometimes what is on the left side and the right side and on the previous page to understand the project, which I felt was a gap which you could improve on a little more.
Yes.
Then I think my favorite page is the contents page. Yeah, so the contents page, I think again over here, maybe there's a little more information you could have given, either on the scale of the project or when it was done. Just some sort of reference, like I think it was there in the previous one, who your guides were. So a little more information about each of these would have been helpful, maybe not on this page but on the subsequent pages.
Okay.
And I liked the fact that she kind of kept one part of her portfolio as her personal sort of a thing, digital art, urban sketches, or uh, and also I felt it was consistent throughout, because she kind of spent a lot more time in the layout and kind of tried to integrate all those ideas of representation into her project. So I did feel that was keeping a certain portion of your portfolio for kind of highlighting your personal interest is it's what distinguishes you sometimes from the other people who are just talking only about their academic work. So a little bit of that is always refreshing.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
no, I have no, personally, I have no this thing against adding photographs or another hobby or, any other interest, your graphic skills. But to me, like what I was trying to come at is the photograph something which I've not seen earlier?
Hmm.
Then it holds my attention for another 2 seconds, or maybe you had the photograph and then you had written 2 sentences below that, which kind of distilled your understanding of that space when you went there.
I have the.
Uh,
I've created a storyline of musical, like I relate music with my photography. So I've actually, I'll just show you.
yeah, okay. Maybe I missed it, But
No,
to
that's.
see the photograph, I probably hold on to, I definitely feel it's good to show a skill set, because I think all officers would definitely look for people with a varied set of skills, but the photograph needs to really stand out, I think that's very important when.
Yeah. there you have it.
Okay.
That's a song by a singer who said that, who wrote a book on goodbye. So I related that part of the music with the images.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, Shantanu, would you like to take some of the questions? There's some more questions.
Yeah, there's more questions. We'll try and answer a few here. The question is to you guys. Every project has a different outlook and would fit differently on a sheet. So is it as advisable for actually creating a rigid template / layout, or just have a progression manner and let the drawings fit organically? So this is a generic question on how to sort of make a portfolio. So every project has a different outlook and would fit differently on a sheet. So is it advisable for actually creating a rigid template / layout, or just have a progression manner and let the drawings fit organically?
Yeah, to me personally, I don't see anything wrong in that. In fact, I find using templates sometimes, okay, it's safe, but sometimes I really wish people would break out of the templates that are available. Like that first page looks standard for most portfolios that come in. I don't see anything wrong in that. It's safe, but people should definitely explore other avenues and I think it's a matter of how you communicate the project best. So you can take whichever flow you feel is correct. You don't need to follow a template. Personally, I don't see the necessity for it. But you have to be sure, and it has to work. Templates allow you the safety of working with something which has been tried and tested before.
Yeah, so that comes with what you were talking about, structuring. So it helps you structure. In the beginning, you talked about structuring, and also it allows you to be a little consistent, because you were also talking about consistency. So in that way, if the template gives you those the safety net of structuring and consistency. So yeah, if you tend to be organic, you may lose your way at some point. So yeah, I think it has pluses and minuses. I think whoever's asked this question, it is anonymous, so I don't know your name, but I think I is very clear here. If you want to go with the organic flow, you should still hold on to what you're trying to communicate. You don't lose a grip on that. Otherwise, if you think that you'll lose direction on your next sheets towards the end or in between, it's better to stay with a format in that sense.
I think it's a little bit of like a module, when you work with a module, you make it in a way that you can combine it in many different ways.
Okay.
So it's like, so portfolio, a structure also which you create for the portfolio is that it should be open enough that it allows for those various possibilities of representing, whether it's a scale of a project, or it's a kind of a project, or it's, your personal work. So I think it should be open-ended in that way. It should not be so rigid that you buy it, whether it's a color or it's a size or it's your only template which is there is the screen, because it's most of the portfolios today are kind of being sent online. So yeah.
See, I think when you talk about template, it doesn't have to be one particular thing. It just has to be, it can be a series of things within a larger set framework. If you look at any magazines, any of the decently formatted magazines, they all work within a template, but you will not feel every page is repetitive. There will be pages which have one image, there will be pages which have two, there will be pages which have taken over the entire image. But there is a commonality in the language with which the portfolio is made. So I don't think you should be looking at it as a template, meaning a very fixed and rigid thing, but more of a visual and an aesthetic sort of ordering that is seen throughout the portfolio.
Yeah, I think also there was another question from Srishant. as a firm, so I think this specifically we all have to answer. As a firm, what do you look for in the applicant? Is it in a range of skills or specific skills that he or she has mastered? So when they make their portfolio, should it be a range of skills which they should try to put, or they should kind of emphasize the specific skills that they have mastered? So Kayzad, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think if you have one particular skill which is just absolutely outstanding, you know, I don't know what that is, but if you have something that is really truly remarkable, then maybe you just show that. But if that is not the case, you do want to show a cross section of things which you are capable of doing, which goes from just showing a plan as in terms of how you organize stuff, your skills in terms of rendering, your sectional drawing, even simple thing like how you format a page. It's very important because it basically everything you do in a portfolio will reflect something about you. So for me, at least, I mean, and most people are not going to have one particular skill, which is outstanding. So it's better for me, at least, to show a wide range of skills.
Iype?
Yeah, so yeah, from a office perspective, and I think definitely we look at a wide range of skills is always a plus point. But I think it's like just what I mentioned to Nikita in her portfolio. I think there were two good drawings in that portfolio, and those should have come across very clear, and they should have been emphasized on. I think it's very important to figure that out and communicate that. So the rest of it was a lot of extra information which I wasn't looking at. And the decision to take somebody on would have been based on those two drawings, if they really evoke some sense of interest. So I think it's very important to decide what's the supreme point you want to communicate in your portfolio. I think that's very important. A variety of skills is always welcome. I think we always value that. But we in our office we particularly focus on, I think, design and plans. That's why I kept stressing on it. Is very important to us, and we look at that as the strongest skill. That's able to come through. That's something that we really value.
Shantanu, do you want to answer it for our firm?
You can answer it. Okay, I mean, one of the things, I mean, like Kayzad also did mention that, I think Praharsh did mention that I want to talk about working drawings. And Kayzad was talking about it's not that important that, working drawings. And I agree with an extent because everybody's office has made this way of approaching working drawings and what is important, how we communicate. So, and there is one aspect that schools have not understood, and this has been with me for a very long time since we did our working drawings in SEP type. And there was always this emphasis that we do one detail that was our detail. It has got nothing to do with any detail you ever seen in your life. It had to be your detail, And I think that was the most interesting sheet of the entire semester. So that is very important. And I calling it working drawings, if we called it working design, we need to change this way we approach working drawings itself in schools. And if that happens, you will see where that spread that you will see will be the most important one that can get you into an office. And I can guarantee you that. And there's a big gap between the way we see working drawings and design. And then there is this idea of people are trying to marry working drawings by saying, take one of your projects and do working drawings. And the details you see have got nothing to do with the project. So I think this gap has to be approached a little differently. If you call it working designs, I think that would be the first thing that would change that sheet itself. And with respect to the skills that you need in an office, I think offices are not very, we're not looking for only working drawing skills. Sometimes we are doing competitions. We need hands at model making. Sometimes we need digital skills just to throw up scenarios where you model things out. I mean, there are so many skills that are needed. So you can display any of those, and like I've said, if it catches your mind, I mean your eye, then you would say this is an interesting person. I would like to sort of interview him. It starts with that interview, and then if the engagement goes well, then and Kayzad, I think it also mentioned one very interesting thing about, I never thought of it, that put your faculty's name, because that's a fact, conversation starter. Never thought of it. It did start many conversations for people who came in interviews, because we always ask them, if we like the project, who was your faculty? And it's interesting because we are also trying to see where is the thought process coming from. Students' designs are also kind of guided by somebody, and we want to understand that person. So I think that's a very, very important aspect that Kayzad did bring about. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered for our office, Manisha, if you want to finish up.
No, I think, I mean, one of the things which you mentioned briefly is what you're looking for at that point sometimes becomes the thing that you look for in the portfolio. So if you're looking for a very strong sense of graphic skills for a competition project that you're working on, or someone like it really, or construction drawings, do they have an understanding of how to draw a proper drawing, make a drawing, 2D drawing. Sometimes if it's working drawings, because we're looking for certain skills at that point on the project, we're, kind of looking for someone. There's one last question. There are a couple of questions, but maybe if you guys are okay, we can take a couple more. Yeah. So one of the things is, would architecture firms prefer a portfolio which is in a website form instead of a typical PDF? This also allows one to choose and see what interests him rather than going through everything that is a part of the portfolio. This is from Ronak Savla. So I think it's a very relevant question, because today, one can look at a website and make one much more easily than it used to in the past. And yes, I think it's an interesting format and it should be explored possibly. But let it not just have easy to load on. It shouldn't be, the images shouldn't take too much time, because that makes it a little restless. And also make sure that the key things that you do want the person to look at are structured in a way that they are on the homepage or something like that, because otherwise one might miss if there is not enough clarity in the website structure itself. So though, it's a linear process which we follow in a portfolio, whereas in a website, it's very non-linear. So sometimes key things could get missed. So that's the only hesitation. So it needs to be curated, or it needs to be structured in a slightly careful manner. But yeah, any opinions from Kayzad, you or I?
I would personally suggest, not in terms of what I prefer, but I would suggest you stick to a PDF which is then put on one of these portals for two reasons. The first is, making a website is not that easy. And I'm sure your Photoshop skills and your InDesign and Illustrator skills are way superior to your Dreamweaver skills or whatever you're using to make the website. The reason I'm saying this is because if the website is not formatted to your aesthetic and it's not something you're happy with, it's unfortunate because you will be judged on it. Yeah. Also, on a website, if things don't work, people are going to get frustrated. And for me, the most important thing is, in a website, you can't control what they're going to see and how they're going to see it. In a PDF format, you want to show them a drawing and you show that drawing big. You don't want them to look at something, you don't show that. You have the potential to control how the office is evaluating you. If you have a website, it's a free for all thing. I can go on one project first, go on another project second. I mean, I just might go to a bad project first and I will shut the link off. Your website takes time, I will shut the link off. And it's unfortunate, but that's the truth of the matter. So I would suggest you stick to a PDF.
Yeah. To me personally, I'm open to any form of communication, as long as I'm assuming just as much. I agree with Manisha and Kayzad. that there is a high possibility of losing the narrative in the process, and it can be lose the structure. But I'm okay with a portfolio coming in any format. It could be a video, it could be this thing. We have a setup in the office which kind of screens this portfolios which come in. And I think as long as it's of interest, I think surely, and you need to check whether it works on a, PC or Mac or, all that is finally the applicant's responsibility. But I'm open to a website or a video, anything. I think as long as it communicates what you're trying to do, I don't see any problem in that. We wouldn't ignore it because of that. I think as long as, I think the possibilities, like just like we said when we were talking earlier about the uh, not using a template. A template is a safer mode. I think it's the same thing over here. But I would be open to looking at a video or a website. I'm pretty much open to it.
There's one more question. Where does the concept and the vision of the project stand compared to the technical skill sets as firms look at the portfolio? Do you want me to read it again? Where does the concept and vision of the project stand compared to the technical skill set as firms look at the portfolios? So what they're saying is essentially how important are the technical skills compared to the concept and the vision of the project itself when you're looking at evaluating a portfolio?
To me personally, if I look at the 4 portfolios which you presented today, I would judge all 4 of them very differently. Somebody may have been very strong on technical, and somebody may have been stronger on working drawings. Somebody would have been stronger on concept design. I don't think we really we value all 4 of them. All aspects of it. We do lay an emphasis on design, like I mentioned earlier, but I'm open to all. There's nothing that it could be. In fact, a lot of the portfolios which we get from people applying from outside the country, I think in India, the education system is geared towards much larger scale projects, whereas a lot of the applications which come in from outside the country are much smaller. If you look at a third year portfolio, the scale of the projects is much smaller, but they would be much stronger in terms of concept and design with, at that stage as compared to portfolios that we receive in India, So we judge everything I don't think we judge it based on concept or working drawings. I think if there's a skill which comes through strongly, we would accept it.
Yeah, I think it's every portfolio has its own strength. So it's difficult to say that one thing is important versus another. Something might appeal to you in the skill set that the student has, or something might appeal to you where there is a certain conceptual framework that has been set out for a portfolio interests us. So I think all of them are or if not, in many other things which we look for in a portfolio. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. This is something that, when we make a portfolio, and I'm coming from, let's say, I'm looking at Praharsh, the first portfolio, Gyan's portfolio. And I realized, and this is a question I'm asking, is that some of his wall sections, which had this kind of perspective, were catching my eye a lot. And then when that happens, when you start realizing it yourself, that means if Gyan realized it himself, that these are very nice drawings, and he may have developed the skill maybe in the third year, but would he take a few steps back and go to his second year drawings to make similar kind of drawings? Now, because then you find some words of consistency that I was talking about, then you see a structure developing with the language. I don't know if it is right or wrong. That's why I'm asking this question to you all. Would it be a right way to do it? Because maybe you didn't have that skill before, you didn't have the visualization before, and that you develop later. But your other projects could also do with that kind of a drawing. So, and generally we do add drawings to our portfolio. Whenever we've made portfolios, we had to make drawings that we thought we would make in the semester. We didn't make those drawings because of time. and we did add them for our portfolio, would it be something that you would recommend or say that, yeah, it should be done? I mean, how would you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'm frankly okay if you redo your entire portfolio from scratch. A portfolio, for me at least, shows your current skill set. So, I mean, you don't want to use the fact that you did not know how to draw in the first year to show a poor drawing which you could have improved upon right now. So I feel you want to redraw your entire portfolio, redraw your entire portfolio. I mean, that goes back to, like I spoke about Ishigami's drawings and Sana's drawings.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did not come up with that all of a sudden, like, something that grew with time, and then they backdrew all their other drawings in a similar manner to show them in a coherent manner. And I feel if you do that in a portfolio, it will set your portfolio apart.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. I have no reservations about going back, and I think I mentioned it also to Nikita to, on certain drawings, she could actually touch it up and communicate much better,
Yeah. Fair enough. I felt that in Gyan's portfolio, so I was just wondering, and I think it's a thing to do because you realize things in the portfolio and then you can actually go back to, yeah. Any other questions, Manisha, or we?
I think
or do the participants have a question? Asked as a question.
Hi, I think I have a question, or it's just a thought that kind of when you, as a student, trying to put the work forward. I think for me, to explain any particular project, the process of how the thought has come to finally that is important. Otherwise, I feel how would the other person understand my space of thought? And I think that's important to communicate through the portfolio. But what I understand is it is not necessary to show each and every little drawing you've made, but then how, on what framework or what basis do you pick which particular drawing, because they've all a sort of process which is moved over a particular 5-6 months of time. So then they have all of them at each point have their own importance, which is why I find it a little difficult to leave away some process drawings or to communicate, which has filled up a lot of space also. I understand that, but like to communicate to the other viewer or the architect, what is more important? Like,
What if you add 5 layers to the same drawing and just make it a single graphic, just to brief it up?
Probably.
I think we are looking more at a skill set. No? I don't think so. We're looking at the design. I think you've already had your jury for the semester and they made all their decisions on the whole, whether it's good and whether you worked on study model to your final model. I think with the number of applications that come in, what we would be essentially, okay, is this model really interesting? There's a lot of effort. Does so and so have a skill in making models? Is she really able to communicate, he or she able to communicate something well in a drawing? Is he able to do a good working drawing? I don't think we have a limitation in terms of time of trying to assess your portfolio, your design on each project from beginning to end, definitely. I don't think so we're looking for that. Nobody is. At least to me personally, I don't think so.
Yeah. Nikita, maybe one thing is like, for example, I'll go back to that miniature which you had where you were showing these series of courtyards and you come down and there's these shaded spaces that are there and there are people doing different activities. I feel that itself is the process for me. That represents your process of what you thought of because you were trying to create shaded a sketch on the side saying that shading of courtyards, it's not so imperative, right? Like, I mean, it's not necessary at all. So I would much rather look at that larger, like, and so if you represent your drawing in a adequate manner, you don't need those small sketches necessarily, and not necessarily so many of them. You can have a few, but I think there was just too much clutter in some of the spreads, which I thought which we thought could be avoided completely. So yeah.
So I wanted to understand what is the kind of duration you guys spend on a certain portfolio? Is it like, so I've heard that it's bare seconds.
Great secrets. Does anybody want to go first or do I?
You said first. So.
Okay, Gyan, like Kayzad said, if you do stumble on a portfolio, sometimes it ends at the first page. And honestly, and there are reasons for it. Because let's say, this question we discussed about the format itself. People formats with these emoticon type of sort of things on them. Sort of, it doesn't bring out a personality. We're trying to connect with another human being when we're looking at a portfolio. I mean, we call it a portfolio, but actually we are talking like, I want to know Gyan and his work and how do I connect with you? So if you look at it from that perspective, why that first page, after the first page we shut it down, is only that reason that you're not, coming close to us. So the idea is, if we can come close together, how do you want to do that? So just look at it that way. It's not about the time. The time, I mean, sometimes I've spent so much time on a portfolio and sometimes it bothers me, oh my God, because you get interested in that person, the way that person's, about the work and everything about it, because we're looking for good work. I mean, come on. It's sometimes you're looking all the time, but sometimes it's just in that search, it's the first page that, you shut it down. So we do spend time sometimes, but sometimes that time is so short because you don't look at the portfolio.
Yeah, I also think it depends on, sometimes you don't even open the portfolio.
Yeah.
You don't open the portfolio. If you see a forward in the email.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You see a forward, or you see like a BCC or CC to like 100 people and saying how they're really interested in your work. We understand you're writing to 10 offices, at least copy paste it 10 times. Don't just CC everyone to it. Also, if your portfolio is not labeled properly, like, if it's called Pakka Final 100%, then, it shows a certain sort of seriousness to your work. If your portfolio is 48 MB, no one's opening it. So I feel you need to work a little bit before you even get someone to open the portfolio, frankly.
No, and I think one more point, I agree. I mean, that's one of the things which I wanted to mention to you. You get these like serious CCs to everyone, which is very annoying, and yeah, we don't open them. But the other thing is also, if there is a customer, if you're really interested in working with a firm, I think it's better if you know a little bit about the firm when you're applying there. And if you can customize your cover letter, rather than say, hey, I'm school, I want a job here, please look at my portfolio. So rather than something which is so generic, that's also a slight put off. I mean, okay, you kind of don't know if that person is really interested or they're not interested, but then their portfolio has to be really, really good for us to take a look at it. So yeah, I mean, I agree with all the points that Kayzad said. We sometimes just don't get down to even opening them because of that reason, but we take great pride as if we do go through at least the ones which fit these few parameters, whether they're the right size, whether the cover letter is okay. We do go through every portfolio. But just being a small firm, it doesn't help to have, you get sometimes a lot of them and it's difficult to reply back to all, and we feel very this thing about it. But yeah.
All right, any more questions from you all? All of you all have asked your questions. Kashish, you asked your question. Shall we call it a wrap then? You want me to conclude?
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, participants.
Yeah, thanks. But I'll just conclude with a few things. I think what the discussions that we had were very interesting. And I think some of the things that came out, I'll just try and summarize. Kayzad mentioned something very interesting about how to look at your interests and make that a lens. And I think that helps somebody structure a portfolio. I thought that was a very, very interesting thing that is something that I would take. There was also a discussion about skill versus narrative. How much are we? How much do you want to show your skill versus how much of the narrative is important to the portfolio? And I think a balance, that was had in maybe one of the portfolios. There was a discussion about that. So then there's also this discussion about your idea itself that Kayzad was talking about. I think that was very important. Bring out that idea, which is very important, because we are also looking at ideas. I think when we without that idea, you're losing the soul of the project sometimes. Yeah, so I think that's another important aspect. And I was mentioning about your strongest skill. I mean, I think that's very important, because, and that's what I was trying to come to at Gyan's portfolio when I said that when you find that and then you've developed the skill, and how do you use that skill to sort of let that skill go across the portfolio and bring it out. I was also in the beginning show or telling us about how structuring is very important. Pause is important in a portfolio, because I think up at that very, very heavy sort of moving space, somewhere you need to sort of pause and between sheets. And finally, I think optimization, where many of the portfolios, I mean, not today all of them, but many of the portfolios we've seen, and I was talking about optimization. I mean, it could be this exercise, and I think Nick in that question is that it could be this exercise that you keep removing drawing after drawing to see still is it valid or not. Does this drawing have a similar story to the other drawing? Does it cover what that drawing covered? And actually you do this exercise of clearing out that junk, and or I won't call it junk, but I know you're passionate about everything, but you need to stand outside and view it, and more like a self reflection in that sense. Because every drawing is drawn by you, passionately drawn. You need to take that, and then you realize that no, this is optimum and this would work. So I think optimization is a big part that needs to be covered when you're making that portfolio. And yeah, I think there's many more points that I have missed, but some interesting discussions. I thought that was more what we are coming up for. And thanks, Iype, and thanks.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah, please.
I'll just, it's a small story. When we were doing a job once,
yeah,
the client wanted to interview contractors. Okay. So after a lengthy process, he shortlisted 2. The first guy came with a bunch of materials, bunch of projects, bunch of references, threw names all over. The next guy came with one small sample that he made out of wood. And he just said, after 25 years, this is what I can do. He's the one that got the job. And I feel there's a lot of power and brevity, both visual and when you talk, which I feel is being missed out by most people. This is something that I've repeated 10 times, that, put less stuff in your portfolio, it'll just be a lot more powerful. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. Iype, you have any stories for us? Because I like the stories also.
No stories. I think I just want to add that it's something that we also struggle with as professionals. How do you communicate with the right amount of information? So it's not something that's just driven to a intern portfolio. It's something that you'll struggle with later. You're applying for a master's degree. How do you adapt it for different universities? So I think that's very important to understand, and something even as professionals we struggle with. How do you communicate with you're going to get a window of 20 minutes with a client, or 15 minutes. How do you communicate well in that time? And it's very important to build up that skill set of being able to communicate quickly in the right amount of time, and it's something that we all struggle with as professionals. We all struggle with it.
True.
Yeah. Cool.
I think this has been a great session. This is something, one of the reasons I think I just want to mention to our viewers is is that this is one area that schools don't cover. It's never been looked at seriously, about how you communicate when you approach an office. Internship is a clear, part of the curriculum, but we remember even when we were studying, even had a class over how do you want to communicate to an office. There was never a discussion. It was understood that you go and figure it out. So I think this everybody's trying to figure it out, and we thought the best way is to bring the people who are hiring or looking for good talent. Actually, the hiring is the wrong word. We're all looking for good talent, and we thought the discussion with people who are looking for good talent, with people who are making those portfolios together, and that would be a healthy discussion. I hope it was a healthy discussion. It's brought out very, very good insights, and thank you all for being here. Anybody who wants to make any statement?
I think just thank you, I thank you, Kayzad, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
And yeah, okay, bye now. Bye.
Bye and goodbye and good night.
Good night. Okay, only we are left. I do stop video.